I never knew how quickly trust could fracture, how suddenly it could reshape everything I thought I knew about myself, until the moment I met her eyes. She was standing there, half leaning against the doorway, sunlight brushing the edges of her hair, and the world seemed to tilt. Her gaze wasn't just looking at me, it was sizing me up, weighing me, threading into places I didn't even know I had. My chest tightened as if it knew something my mind hadn't yet admitted. "Hi," she said, soft, almost casual, yet every word vibrated through me like a secret chord. Her voice had a weight to it, a slow, deliberate cadence that made my thoughts stumble. I realized, in that instant, that I would remember the sound forever. I stepped closer, my hand brushing hers as I passed, an accidental graze that left an echo of warmth tingling up my arm. My heart leapt violently in my chest, erratic, almost painful, as if trying to remind me that I was alive in a way I hadn't been before. The air between us became heavier, almost solid, charged with a tension I couldn't name. I wanted to step back, and yet I couldn't. She tilted her head slightly, a faint, knowing smile curling at the edges of her lips. There was something in her silence, in the way she let the moment stretch, that made me ache with curiosity and unease. What was she hiding? And why did I feel like I could never walk away, even if I wanted to? My thoughts tumbled in chaotic loops, a mixture of longing, caution, and something darker I refused to name. Every glance, every pause, every breath she let escape near me made me feel like I was teetering on the edge of something irreversible. I wanted to ask questions, wanted to pull away, wanted to run, and yet I stayed, frozen by the intensity of it all. And then, I felt it. A shift in the air, subtle but undeniable, like a storm rolling over a calm sea. My pulse accelerated. Something was approaching, something intense, something that promised to change the rules I had been clinging to. I inhaled sharply. I had no idea what it was, but I knew, with every fiber of me, that my life had just tilted, and there would be no returning to the way things were. I thought I could steady myself. I thought I could step back, reclaim control. But the moment she appeared in my periphery, the world tilted again, and all my careful walls crumbled. She laughed softly at something insignificant, a glance, a gesture, a private joke I hadn't fully heard, and my focus scattered like glass. My chest tightened. My breath hitched without warning. I felt it in my fingers, twitching slightly as if they remembered her touch before it even happened. We brushed shoulders in the crowded cafe, an accidental touch that made my heart spike and my stomach knot. I tried to shrug it off, tried to convince myself it was nothing, but her nearness, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the warmth of her skin, made everything else fade. I noticed every detail, the way her hair caught the light, the curve of her smile, the way her eyes lingered on me just a second too long. She leaned closer to hear my reply, and our breaths brushed. Just a fraction of a second, and yet I felt it in every nerve. My pulse thundered in my ears. I wanted to pull back, wanted to remind myself that caution was wisdom, but some unspoken gravity held me there, frozen. I couldn't stop staring, couldn't stop noticing. Every pause between words stretched impossibly long, charged with a tension I couldn't name. I felt it in my hands, in my chest, in the shallow rhythm of my breathing. I wanted to speak, to bridge the space, but every word threatened to betray how much of me was already hers. I tried to retreat in thought, constructing excuses, rehearsing distance, telling myself this closeness was dangerous, but the moment her gaze caught mine again, lingering and unrelenting, every plan collapsed. My chest tightened, my breath stuttered. I was aware of the warmth of her presence, the quiet electricity that hovered in every accidental brush, every shared silence. And still, I stayed. Still, I wanted more, even as I tried to pull away. I knew I was teetering on a line I shouldn't cross, yet every instinct in me rebelled against retreat. My mind screamed caution, but my body betrayed me, leaning closer, craving proximity, longing for a closeness I didn't dare name. Nothing had resolved. Nothing had shifted completely, yet everything had changed. And I felt it, the tension between us, taut and unspoken, pulling me further into a story I was powerless to resist. I tell myself I shouldn't feel this way. I tell myself she's trouble, that I've been here before, drawn too close, burned too easily, but my chest rebels against logic. The warning signs from the past, the echoes of old mistakes, rise up in my mind, demanding caution. And yet, I can't stop wanting her. Every time she smiles, that faint, teasing curl of her lips, I feel my carefully constructed walls weaken. Every accidental brush of her hand sends a jolt through me, and I realize how long it's been since I've felt this raw, this exposed. My heartbeat hammers in my ears, my breath coming in shallow bursts, betraying every thought I try to hide. I try to retreat inwardly, reminding myself of past wounds, the trust one gave too freely, the times my heart was ignored or broken. But the pull of her gaze, the warmth of her nearness, makes every rational argument crumble. My mind argues caution, my body argues surrender. There's a moment when we're standing close, just inches apart. Her eyes meet mine, and I feel the space between us shrink without either of us moving. I want to reach for her hand, to let her know how much she unsettles me, but I hesitate. My fingers twitch, almost betraying me, almost touching her, and then I pull back, not out of disinterest, but fear. Fear that if I give in even a fraction, there'll be no turning back. And yet, the almost moments linger. The almost confessions hang in the air like fragile glass, reflecting my longing and my hesitation. I notice the way she tilts her head slightly when she laughs, the way her eyes linger on mine, unguarded, as if daring me to cross the line I'm terrified to breach. I hate that I'm losing control. I hate that my walls, my careful defenses, crumble in the presence of someone who seems to understand me better than I understand myself. I want to pull away, to protect myself, but the magnetic tension between us refuses to let me. Every breath, every glance, every near touch drags me closer to something I'm not ready to face, but I'm powerless to resist. And as much as I fight it, I know this is only the beginning. The room seemed smaller when she was near, the air between us charged, almost vibrating with the unspoken. Every breath she took brushed my senses, every heartbeat of mine echoed against hers in a rhythm I couldn't control. My chest felt like it might split open from the force of it. She laughed softly at something trivial, and it was like the world tilted again, but differently this time, like gravity itself was pulling me toward her. I noticed everything, the way her lashes swept down when she blinked, the faintest curve of her smile, the warmth radiating from her skin even across the space that separated us. I swallowed hard, aware of how loud my own breathing sounded. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but the words tangled, tripping over the tension in my throat. My fingers itched to reach out, to close the distance, but I froze. I didn't want to ruin this fragile moment by being clumsy, by admitting too much too soon. Her gaze held me, steady and unrelenting, as if she already knew the storm inside me. I felt it in my stomach, a pull so visceral it left me dizzy. My heart raced, my pulse screaming in my ears, and I realized I was trembling, not from fear, exactly, but from the weight of wanting her so badly I couldn't think straight. Then, as if she sensed my hesitation, she leaned ever so slightly closer. I could feel the warmth of her breath, the subtle scent of her perfume enveloping me, every inch a whisper of temptation. My instincts wanted to close the last few inches between us, to let her know how much I ached to bridge the gap, but I stopped, just short. I wanted to confess, to let the truth tumble out in a whisper, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not while the air itself held us suspended between longing and fear. I let my gaze drink her in, memorizing the moments I didn't dare speak aloud. Every second stretched impossibly long, the tension almost unbearable, the electric charge of closeness leaving me raw. And then, the moment lingered, poised on the knife edge of possibility, waiting for something neither of us dared release. I could feel it, the approaching shift, but I held my breath, aware that if I exhaled, everything might change. The rain tapped against the window in a soft, persistent rhythm, each drop punctuating the tension between us. I could feel it in the room, in the quiet spaces we shared, the way her presence made every shadow stretch closer, every heartbeat louder. My chest ached, my hands trembled slightly as if the air itself carried electricity meant only for us. I felt her breath melt into mine, a warmth that seeped into places I hadn't known were waiting. It wasn't sudden, it was slow, a tide rolling in, eroding every boundary I had built. I tried to convince myself I could remain steady, that this was just a moment of closeness, but her nearness rewrote everything I thought I could control. I noticed how she tilted her head, the faintest inclination, and how her gaze held me without needing to speak. It wasn't her touch, it was the way she looked at me, as if she saw the parts of me I tried to hide, as if she understood every hesitation, every fracture of my past. My mind scrambled, memories and longing colliding in a chaotic hum, yet I couldn't pull away. I didn't want to. The soft patter of rain was a backdrop to the storm inside me. Each exhale, each silent pause, felt monumental, weighted with the promise of something unspoken. Her presence filled the room, and I was acutely aware of my own breathing, of the tremor in my hands, of the way my heart refused to obey reason. I wanted to speak, to confess the ache, the fear, the one I could no longer contain, but words felt inadequate. The truth was simpler in silence. We were here, together, and the space between us was electric. Every glance, every almost touch, was amplified by everything we hadn't said. Her closeness was a force, subtle yet undeniable, pressing against the edges of my restraint. I felt like I was teetering on the brink of something enormous, something that demanded surrender. My pulse throbbed, my stomach twisted, and I realized that desire was no longer a whisper, it was a quiet roar that refused to be ignored. And yet, it wasn't just desire. It was trust, fragility, and the dangerous thrill of letting someone in. My mind raced, my breath caught, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself exist fully in the moment, aware that everything might shift, aware that nothing would ever be the same. In that shared silence, drenched in the sound of rain, I understood something undeniable. This night would linger in me, an imprint of closeness and longing that words could never capture. I woke to the soft spill of morning light, the kind that made everything look fragile, almost sacred. My first thought was of her, the way she had leaned near me, the warmth that lingered like a quiet echo. My chest tightened, a mix of longing and fear pressing against ribs that hadn't learned to hold so much at once. The silence was loud. Every breath I drew seemed to amplify it, and I realized how heavy the air felt after a night charged with unspoken confessions. I feared the moment I'd see her eyes, feared that something in them might shift the fragile balance we had found. I feared the pull of her closeness and what it might mean for the walls I had worked so hard to maintain. And yet, beneath the fear, there was an ache of cherishing. I clung to the memory of her gaze, the way her presence had rewritten everything I thought I could control. I regretted nothing, even the moments where hesitation had stolen words I longed to speak. They were mine to remember, a quiet imprint that refused to fade. I sat up slowly, heart still thrumming, and glanced toward her. That's when I noticed it, a flicker in her eyes, subtle but unmistakable. A truth I hadn't seen before, a shadow of something she had kept from me. My breath caught. I wanted to ask, but the words stuck in my throat, tangled in fear and wonder. The shift wasn't dramatic. It was a nuance, a quiet revelation that made the space between us feel infinite and immediate at once. Something had changed, not just in her, but in me. I felt it deep inside, a recalibration of how I measured trust, closeness, and the unspoken promises hanging between us. The morning felt different, as if the world itself had noticed the tension, the charge left behind. I was aware of every sound, every flicker of light, every subtle movement she made. And in that awareness, I realized that nothing would ever feel the same again, not her, not the quiet we had shared, not the part of me that had finally surrendered to the pull of her presence. Something unspoken hovered between us, a promise and a warning in equal measure. And for the first time, I understood that mornings could carry weight, that dawn could reveal truths we had been too afraid to see in the dark. I chose her. And in that choice, everything else fell away, the doubts, the hesitation, the shadows of old wounds. Standing there, just beneath the waning light of evening, I felt a quiet clarity settle in my chest. My heartbeat, once erratic and loud, slowed to a rhythm that matched hers. Her hand in mine was effortless, familiar, yet electrifying. I felt the warmth seep through me, rewriting every idea I had of restraint, control, and love. I realized that choosing her wasn't reckless, it was inevitable. Every glance, every silent moment, every tremor of breath between us had led to this. I leaned close, resting my forehead against hers, and the world contracted to that single, infinite point of connection. My breath mingled with hers, slow, steady, full of unspoken promises. This wasn't a fleeting moment, it was the culmination of every almost touch, every hesitation, every night of longing and fear. I whispered nothing, because words would have been crude beside the poetry of her presence. Choosing her wasn't about surrender, it was about finding the part of myself that had been waiting for her all along. And in that quiet, luminous instant, I knew that love wasn't loud or explosive. It was gentle, patient, and utterly devastating in its completeness. I remember her in fragments, the tilt of her head, the weight of her gaze, the ghost of her laughter echoing in empty rooms. My chest aches as I recall how close we had come, how nearly everything was possible, only to slip through my fingers like water I could never hold. I traced the memory of her presence as if it were a pulse beneath my skin. My hands remember trembling, my breath remembers catching, my heart remembers a rhythm that no longer exists. She rewrote parts of me I had never known, and now all that remains is the ache of remembering. I walk through quiet streets, see shadows in sunlight, feel echoes of her in every silence. I think of what might have been, and it's both unbearable and beautiful. Love, I realize, had made me deaf, and absence made me hear every note I had ignored. Even in loss, even in the hollow weight of absence, I carry her. The memory is intimate, cinematic, and alive, a private cinema of everything I almost had, everything I almost dared to feel. And perhaps that is enough, for now.